This is part 4 on our segment of law and government, the Insurrection Act.
The Insurrection Act, what it is, and why it still matters. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're unpacking a phrase that jumps into the headlines whenever the country feels on edge. The Insurrection Act. What is it? When can it be used? And how does it shape what's happening in the U.S. right now? Let's break it down in plain English. You've probably heard people say, the president could just send in the troops. But there's a law that controls exactly when and how that can happen. It's over 200 years old. It's been used to both protect civil rights and crack down on unrest, and it still has real consequences for democracy, protest, and public safety today. That law is the Insurrection Act. What is the Insurrection Act? At its core, the Insurrection Act is a set of federal laws that let the U.S. President deploy active duty military forces within the United States in very specific situations, usually when local or state authorities can't or won't keep order, or when federal law and constitutional rights are being blocked. Think of it as an exception to the usual rule. Under the Posse Comitatus Act, the military generally can't act as domestic law enforcement. The Insurrection Act is one of the main carve-outs that allows it, under limited conditions. Key idea, it's not a standing order. It's a power the president can invoke under certain triggers, often after a formal proclamation telling people to disperse. Where did it come from? Passed in 1807, later amended after the Civil War and during Reconstruction. Originally designed to help the federal government respond to rebellions, resistance to federal law, or situations where states couldn't maintain public order. Historically invoked to enforce civil rights like desegregation when some states refuse to comply with federal court orders. When can it be used? The triggers. While the details are legalese, you can think of 3 broad buckets. At a governor's request, if a state's legislature or governor asks for help to suppress an insurrection or restore order, the president can deploy federal troops. To enforce federal law, if unlawful obstructions or rebellions make it impracticable to enforce U.S. laws through normal judicial processes, the president can act. To protect civil rights. If people are being deprived of constitutional rights and the state authorities are unable or unwilling to protect them, the president can send troops to enforce those rights and federal court orders. Important. Before troops are used, the president is supposed to issue a proclamation ordering the insurgents to disperse. How is this different from the National Guard? National Guard under state control, Title 32, State Active Duty. Governors can use Guard troops inside their state for emergencies, storms, wildfires, unrest, without invoking the Insurrection Act. National Guard under federal control, Title 10. Once federalized, Guard troops become part of the federal military chain of command, just like active duty troops. The Insurrection Act is often about moving beyond state-controlled Guard forces, or stepping in when state leaders won't or can't act. Common myths versus reality. Myth, the president can send the military anywhere, anytime. Reality, the act is limited to specific circumstances, often requiring a proclamation and tied to enforcing federal law or protecting constitutional rights. Myth, the act suspends the Constitution. Reality, it doesn't. Troops remain bound by U.S. law, the Constitution, and rules of engagement. Courts can review abuses after the fact, though real-time checks are weaker. Myth, it's the same as martial law. Reality, martial law is a different, much more extreme concept, involving military rule replacing civil authority. The Insurrection Act doesn't automatically do that, and martial law in the U.S. is extremely rare and heavily contested. Why this matters right now? Democratic resilience. The act sits at the intersection of protest, public safety, and civil rights. How and when it's used signals what kind of democracy we want. One that protects dissent and equality, or one that meets dissent with force. Future flashpoints. Election cycles, labor disputes, racial justice demonstrations, and climate protests can all create friction with authorities. Knowing the ground rules helps communities, activists, and officials plan and respond responsibly. State-federal tensions. As states pursue sharply different policies, the potential for legal standoffs grows. The Act is one of the few tools that can break a deadlock, so understanding it is key. Quick recap. The Insurrection Act is an exception to the rule that keeps the military out of domestic law enforcement. It's been used to enforce civil rights and to quell unrest, which is why opinions about it are complicated. It remains relevant wherever protests, civil rights, and federal-state conflicts collide. Many experts argue it needs modern guardrails to prevent abuse while preserving the ability to respond to true emergencies. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit like and subscribe for more clear explainers on law, rights, and power in America. And let me know in the comments, should the Insurrection Act be reformed? And if so, how?